Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, Jaws. Bloody hell. It's been a
Jaws.
long day, and it's Monday. Yeah, I'm actually a James Bond villain now, so I'm sorry to
Or
get
just the
that.
shark. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe
the shark
Cocaine
that
Bear
ruined my
has
life.
just made you think about, different
I'm
famous
just a
animals.
mess. I
Yeah.
think because I watched Rocky as well this weekend, it's been in the very much the punching mindset.
Mm.
My head's not took a beating, literally. It just feels like it has. But you're the one that's been ill. So before I ask how are you,
Yeah.
how are you feeling? And thank you for coming on.
My throat is sore, but I sounded like Barry White this morning. So I mean, there's definitely I would say improvement, but I sounded good as Barry White. I mean, if you're gonna sound like anyone, I would like to sound like him. But I'm
Would
not.
you
But
want to
I'm
sound like
okay.
Danny DeVito?
I would love to sound like Danny
That's like
DeVito.
one of the if there was like if someone could, if you had five, and this is a very different conversation to Last of Us, but
Oh
if
yeah.
someone's going to say like you can do five perfect imitations, you'll never ever need to worry about not doing another. Danny DeVito would be one of my five. I
No,
don't know
I,
why.
I could have to agree on that. But now I'm thinking of who else I would want. And I don't know. This could be a very good
Yeah,
conversation.
is it going to be a better conversation than episode 7 of The Last of Us Left Behind? We'll find out. But that's a lovely segue. We want to hear from everyone that's been watching today at home. So please do comment your thoughts on The Last of Us episode 7. And don't forget to hit that like button if you like the video. If you're already fuming that we're talking about impressions, not The Last of Us, don't you worry. We'll get back on track at some point. And maybe hit the subscribe button. There's a couple more weeks to Last of Us. But there's obviously another big show starting this week because The Mandalorian returns. Pedro Pascal is gracing our screens twice a week, moving forward for 2 weeks. And it is his world. We are living in it. And it's us talking about him again. So The Mandalorian returns on Wednesday.
He is
That's going to
daddy.
be fun. He is.
He
He
is
keeps being
daddy.
asked if he's daddy. And I feel at some point he's going to snap on live TV.
But he's
But
taken it in his stride. I mean, he
I
keeps
know.
referring to Sarah Paulson as mummy, or mother, which is fine, and absolutely true as well. Um, we are in a Pedro Pascal renaissance, and I'm here for it. 100%.
Absolutely. And it makes me even want to rewatch Game of Thrones. I've not seen that for a very long time.
I thought that same thing. I actually watched a couple of clips this weekend, and I was like, "Do you know what? I kind of, yeah." I was like, "Oh, season four of Game of Thrones. What happened?"
The peak. I remember it clear as daylight. There I was eating my cereal at 10 to 3, thinking, here we go. What a great duel is on the way. And then a part of me remembered, I was like, hold on. I've read a bit further ahead. I'm pretty sure the mountain becomes a zombie. And then in literally the space of 30 seconds, the ending happened and I felt sick. Didn't get that reaction because I'd already clocked it 30 seconds before. But Indira Varma was amazing in that. Just made me realize that she's going to be at Star Wars Celebration. That's coming very soon. Lots of Mandalorian Star Wars connections happening. Let's get them reunited in the Mandalorian, shall we? But going back to The Last of Us, episode 7. What I want to ask you first, obviously we spoke last week, episode 6, episode Kin. I think an episode that's not just grown on me over the week, but this series has been an incredible series from start to finish, and I do think episode 6 is right up there with some of the top ones. What was your thoughts on the cliffhanger week ending and then heading into today?
It's a strong one. It's kind of like an old, reliable character endangerment. What's going to happen. It's very kind of like classic Doctor Who. Oh my god, what's happened? Is the main character going to die? Like, shock. In mid-series, what's going to happen? And of course, they could have thrown a complete curveball. They could have done that right now, but no. So no, I love the cliffhanger. I mean, I'm kind of annoyed at the series. I think I said it last time or the time before, but I'm annoyed about how good it is because it means that every week I'm just kind of like, that was great again, and I'm finding it really difficult to be like, like I didn't like this or I didn't like that, because everything that's happening I'm really enjoying, and it's frustrating. But that's like the biggest compliment I think you could have, is that it's frustrating that I can't find the bad. Or I'm just being really biased about it, but I think a lot of people are thinking the exact same way.
No, I'm kind of with you. And with today's episode as well, Left Behind, obviously, we know this is the DLC from the game. We've known this was going to make it into the adaptation. They'd said it at the start. There were trailer photos. Of course, they cast Riley as well. And obviously, when I got to watch it those weeks ago, I'm going to be in a really weird tangent this episode, being honest. I really enjoyed the episode, and I still do. And I still very much think this was a good episode today, a very good episode. I think it was very much interesting watching my dad, who doesn't know. Again, he's not played the game. He's known the backstory. I think this episode will be much more interesting to those that haven't played that game, if I'm being honest today. What I will say is I don't think the cliffhanger worked today. Now, if this is me because I played the game, I do not know. But I think the week wait for the flashback to then go to next week to what we know what's coming if you played. I don't know how that fares in the wait. What I will say was when I watched the whole thing, it worked so well because it was like, let's have a bit of a break, let's dip to the past, and then we're going to go back in. So I think this is a very good episode today, but I'm very curious to see how it goes. And that was kind of going to lead me to asking, like, how am I reading it? Like, how was that cliffhanger? I know you know what happens, but how was it today?
I think it would have. I'm not sure whether it would have hit better or not if you hadn't seen Joel at the beginning. And I think that's the thing is with this part of the story, you don't see Joel for a bit, and it is up in the air. Oh, is Ellie on her own? And that's the whole, thing that then can lead into this Left Behind DLC. Although in the game, we know that originally you would have played the full game without this DLC, and you would have just had that experience, which many of us had. So, but then when that was added, it was well known that this was the time period within the story that this flashback was actually happening for Ellie, or at least for us as a player. So, I mean, it still makes sense to have it here, but again, I don't know whether it would have been better to not show Joel and just have Ellie doing what she was doing. So, I mean, there's a potential criticism. I don't know whether that could have worked better because, I mean, I didn't have an issue with it, but you saying that does make me think, well, they could have hit better if, Ellie trying to help Joel if you hadn't seen him, if you didn't know if he was alive. Yeah. So then at the very end, see that he is alive and she's trying to help. Maybe that could have worked better because, I mean, you're right. It is. We've spent a week since then to then just have this flashback to then knowing that Joel was fine from the get-go. Well, not fine, but he's still alive. And then, yeah, but then just spend all of it in flashback. So
yeah, and it's kind of where I'm here that again, it's not for me to say it because I think this is a very, very good episode of television today, and it's unfair. I just think on that weekly, week-to-week basis, this is one of the first times I think episode has not worked. And I know we go back to episode 3, which we know is one of the best episodes of the entire show. If not, it is the best. That even the spending time with Ben and Frank, that all led to an important story moment for Joel and for Ellie. That led to a very important part of their relationship in the story moving forward. And obviously, we know this is a flashback, and I think this was more of a very neat. We'll get to know Ellie a bit, and I do think this episode would have gone down better with people that wasn't aware with her. If they didn't realize by now that she's gay in this.
I mean, I guess the thing, about the ending of this, I think. And I know we're cutting right to that already, but I guess we'll focus more on the flashback. But I think it's her resolve as to kind of ensuring that she, helps the people that she cares about. And at this point, I think it's very obvious that she cares enough about Joel to want to help him, not to want him to survive. And with that coming directly after the flashback with, losing Riley, it makes complete sense, and it makes for a more powerful scene. And she's the one who's got the control in this. And can't say it's learning from mistakes, but it's just taken on board what's happened in the past and gone, right, well, I have an opportunity here, and I can do it. And she's got a lot of self-confidence and belief, which we've seen throughout anyway. And I just grow stronger with her bond with Joel. So it is nice, and I can't say. I think that's why I didn't really have a problem with it, because I kind of see that point of view. But from a wider story perspective, it could have been much more impactful, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on that, and I kind of think going into this as well, we obviously know the importance of Riley being in the show. I love the fact that this series, up to the point, not the game, has made a hint about her. Marlene says something in episode 1. she makes a passing comment in like episode last week, but I have lost people. And I like the fact that they've just specifically not, because part of me thought, are we going to get steady flashbacks each week? Heading into this adaptation, I thought, how are they going to do the flashbacks? Are we going to get episode 1 where it's Sarah, which we did? And I'm like, how are you then going to do Left Behind? Are you going to do Left Behind weekly? Are you going to drop it in on character development? Are we going to do it as its whole episode, which of course they've gone for? It's a very tricky thing to put in place because we know that there is 2, in theory, massive flashbacks, 1 for each character and lead of the show. And obviously, with it being DLC, I would go so far to say that I don't think everyone that's played the game knows of this. Even the PS5 version, and this isn't a criticism as such, even on this new version, the remake, it's still a DLC side piece. You don't play The Last of Us, get to the incident, and then do Left Behind, which I would have thought they'd have merged into it by now. It's still a separate entity that you have to load into it separately. It's a separate loading screen. And part of me wonders that, obviously we know a lot of people have played it, a lot of people know this, but I did think, is this something as well known as we would think? And that's kind of where I stand with it.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's never going to be as well known as the main plot of the game, the main story. Some people played it once and been like, that's it originally. Some people may have just decided not to get it. There's some people it would have passed them by without knowing about it. I mean, I think it depends where you were when it came out, and I think that play would have been like where the main source of people actually went into that specific story in that DLC. But I think it'd be interesting to know. But I don't actually know anyone who's played the game and not played the DLC. Myself,
I didn't play it till the PS4 version because it was built in. I had this weird thing when I was younger that I would never buy DLC or map packs. The old did you ever do the PS3? I don't know if you had a PS3.
No, I didn't have one. No.
There was this amazing thing where if one of your friends bought something on the PS Store, shout out to Jordan if he's watching, you would sign into their account, go on their PS Store history, download it to your console, and then play it. And it's something they were never able to really patch. Even at the start of PS4, it's pretty much eradicated on PS5 now. But you used to download everything there was possible for free. And it was a great thing for DLC. Call of Duty map packs is what I always go to with stuff like that. Ultimate Team, that before it was free when it really began. So that's just a really random thing I wanted to bring up. I've not thought about it for a while. But with this episode, I mean, if we go into it, one thing I'll give this a lot more credit for is I enjoyed seeing Ellie at the FDA. That I think that's something the game and the series hasn't been able to get into as much at the moment because it hasn't needed to until today. That she has grown up within the FDA. She's going through their academy. She's on the progress to be one of those. And I like that this lent into the relationship and her upbringing and what's going to follow on. We know she's not obviously going to be an officer, but it's interesting spending time in this world. How does this society function? How do these people have their roles? You get assigned a job at the age of 17 and that's going to be your job moving forward. I thought it was really interesting, that approach. And I like a lot of things from the early episodes. I just love seeing this world and seeing what are you building off that we've not been able to do in the game. How do you function? How corrupt is the FDA? That's the stuff I think I've really enjoyed. And I think the first couple of scenes of Ellie before we get Riley back, and I think helps that massively.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. I think throughout the whole episode, actually is just. I think sometimes you know they're young, but I think it's then actually really seeing these are kids, they're teenagers. Yeah. A lot of these people that we see, and the fact that they're being just kind of led down this one path, there's not really an alternative solution to this. And, we still don't know like fully what the entire circumstances are and what the outcomes are, but it seems pretty black and white in this world for them. So, I mean, it's to get a character like Ellie, who is just so kind of dances to the beat of her own drum and is just doing her thing, I think it is what we like about her anyway. But then to see her within the confines of this environment just makes it seem like you just like, oh, right, you were not meant for this, get out of here right now. But then you think of all the other people there, and this seems like there's quite a lot of young women who are doing this who are meant to go on to this, which I kind of hate, because you think about how many children are being brought up in that, scenario where they're really having to grow up more quickly than they would have had to.
It's like the hit the youth without sounding like that weird Richard Madley guy.
Yes.
The concept I have is that these are all orphans,
Mm-hmm.
and that they've got no family to go to in the streets or elsewhere. Riley says she lost her parents, and they're chucked in to this FDA organization, and they're indoctrinated into their group. That's going to be their role in society. We're the people that clean up. Without us, this society can't function. We are the glue that holds them all together. It's really interesting. And what this episode really leans into well, the Craig Mazin stuff, is when you bring the Firefly perspective. That, you're terrorists. Well, we're not terrorists. We don't want to bomb people. But we kind of still are terrorists. But we get about it differently. I love that this show is once again raising that question of morality, that is there a right and a wrong side to be on? Are they both the wrong sides? Or is the key survival still? And I think that's what I find really interesting with going back to the world of this, that the Fireflies were starting to get a little bit more insight into how and why they want to operate the way they do.
Well, I when that was brought up about kind of the Fireflies and kind of terrorism, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole too much, but it was really weird thinking about the ages of these characters, because when I was in college, so there was like, some of the people that I hung around with, so we were 16, 17 years old, there was a conversation at one time about, is this person a terrorist or a freedom fighter? And what's, from one perspective, it's going to look like they're a terrorist, but from another person's perspective, from the complete other side, they're going to look like a freedom fighter. So it's a really interesting conversation and thing to have, and I think this is kind of like the perfect setup to kind of have those conversations, because they are both kind of not real organizations. It's not an actual thing, so you can have those conversations more rather than talking about a real life organization and trying to think, well, are they terrorists or are they freedom fighters? So to then have set it in this place where it's younger people who are kind of being told one thing, and the other idea might seem completely impossible. I just think it's really interesting. And Ellie's, of course, the way she is, she'll say that Fireflies are terrorists, but I think does she truly believe that? I don't think so. But I think because she's more savvy than most, and I think she's got a wider vision of what the world could be.
Very well. And I think her placement within it, they say, you could be an officer, this could all be you. Now, whether the FDA would say that and lie, you get that great revelation that Riley, I'm going to be the person watching over people that sweep shit for a living for my whole life. That hits you hard. So that's the 17-year-old girl that's going to get told that's her future. And meanwhile, we're being told that Ellie's going to have this luxurious life in a bed, not on the streets, doing everything great, because they think she'll be an officer if she ups her game. And it raises those points, which I think when you get to this revelation that she's been building the bombs, you get this great moment, because obviously, with the two of them, we know that they are gay. Doesn't it feel weird saying that? It's been on the game for 10 years. As expected, there are certain areas that think, well, this is new. Is it? You've been telling about how great the game is for 10 years. I like that. I don't want to call it. We've watched Titanic recently. This is the second Last of Us episode in a row. We're going to get the Titanic talking. Obviously, that's the whole, Romeo and Juliet on a boat. Now, I'm not saying this is Romeo and Juliet in terrorist, futuristic, survivalist mode, but there is that part of two people that want to be together that are on completely different ends. Obviously, it's not going to work out for either of them, if I'm being honest, which we didn't. But get that Titanic reference in, George. But again, if you don't get that political build-up, if you don't get that tension between them, the moment of the two together, when they have that kiss, when they have the revelation, stay with me, none of that will have as much impact if it was all hunky-dory from the get-go, that we're going to stay here and we're going to be best mates. I like the fact there was divide. They did this in like 40 minutes. Like Bill and Frank, they have expertly developed relationships in incredibly small amounts of time. And I just think Bella Ramsey in this episode was just amazing again. I thought she was amazing today, and leading up to the moment we all know that's going to happen was just perfection. And her reaction, the performance that came with that, not to slag off the games or anything, but in the game it's like a no, no, no. In this is someone that, for intensive purposes, we know she's alive, but at that point in time, she's a dead person walking. And how they played that scene, I thought they did it a lot better than the game did, if I'm going to be honest. The transition from game to screen again is perfect.
Yeah, it's weird because when you play this DLC in the game, it's so kind of refreshing to me, and it's just, and I've not played it in a long time now, but it was kind of, it felt like if something that you really shouldn't have seen was this, because we'd kind of gone through the whole full first game itself, and then you get this kind of like little nugget of information about Ellie's backstory just prior to her entering the game, and it's so well done there, and then to see it done here is just, it just hits you in a different way. And I think what the best thing about this kind of interpretation, this adaptation, for this particular story, is kind of the innocence of everything. I think, especially after certain TV shows and films that have come out that have focused on younger love stories, and especially like LGBTQ plus love stories, I got a bit of Heartstopper vibes from this. I saw it really drives home that these are still younger people, to show the innocence of kind of finding yourself and finding the person you want to be with. And it's so naturally done through these two friends who now put up against the wall for something that's really going to take them away from each other. They've got this one opportunity which they both end up deciding to take, only for it to lead to like complete tragedy. Is just heart-wrenching. And you're right, Bella Ramsey was amazing. I thought she did fantastically well last week, but she really gets a chance to shine again throughout this whole thing. And you're right, her reaction to kind of the bites in this one, I think surpasses the game. But yeah, I just, and visually, I've got to say as well, I mean, that's one of the best things about the DLC as well, is just kind of like the magic and the beauty of this old world, which is not there. And I think that was done so well here as well. In kind of like, I watched last night, I watched Chopping Mall, the 80s horror film. And, you get that kind of vibe for what this, mall looks like. And, because it's set in the mid-80s, you get that whole vibe of that. And so I wasn't purposefully watching that because I knew that this episode was coming, but it just kind of happened by happenstance. But it's that whole thing of like, what would it be like to stay somewhere late at night? I think a lot of like, especially when you're younger, you have those thoughts, would it be great if you could get in somewhere when it's closed and whatnot? It's kind of like those kind of like childish thoughts, but in a very kind of, this would actually be quite fantastic to kind of step into an old world, and kind of for a few hours imagine that we're there in its prime, or just utilizing it for what it is. So whether that's playing Mortal Kombat or trying on Halloween things and blasting music, it was really cute, which made it really awful at the end because you just know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's the way they built up to it as well, that there's 2 or 3 moments where, and also a big change as well, less is more. One infected, not a whole group of them. I love that it's not this runaway where there's hundreds of zombies underneath or whatever. I know we're not meant to say the Z word anymore in this series, but it's one threat, one infected that just happens to wake up that hears them. Is one that has caused all this carnage. I think it's so much more interesting. It's so much more devastating. A whole horde of them come over. These kids aren't going to make it. It wouldn't work on TV. But you just have one flopping around the room. We don't need close-ups like, of course, with Henry. We don't need to see him being bitten. Well, Sam, sorry. We didn't see him being bitten, but we saw there was something happening. And it's the same with this. And I just think the way they've directed it, the way they've framed it, especially when you get to that joke shop, that they've had this fallout. They're at the fourth, what were they calling it? The miracle or something? The 4 things to show out of 5.
Yeah.
what was it? Wonders of the Mall. That was it.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that, even as a little nod, you get them with the silly Halloween costumes on. But I think what I love so much, and this goes to the performers, this goes to the writing, is it felt like I was watching two 17-year-olds in a mall for the first ever time. These aren't people that grew up in that environment, that have a bit of nostalgia. These are two people that have never been there. They don't understand what it is. And I think the bit that really sold is Ellie going down the escalator. There was this wow moment. And I just thought they handled the location such a great way. The carousel ride, the carousel means nothing to us. And I know that is in the game, but for our generation, carousel's probably laughed at. Something 2-3-year-olds ago on. But these two teenagers are wowed by it. And I think, again, it goes back to the world building stuff I keep talking about, where it's painted this perfect picture that these people haven't grown up in a luxurious, QZ where everything still works perfectly. Even last week with the home cinema, it's still not a cinema, is it? It's chairs, it's a projector, it's a screen. And there's so much interesting stuff they're doing with it. I think this is where it really lended itself to this episode today, that they captured the essence of two people doing this for the first ever time. And the arcade, getting the Mortal Kombat, like showing Mortal Kombat. I know in the game you play it in the imagination, you have to press the buttons, but I loved seeing everything in there and how they reacted to that sort of thing. And it really helped to develop their relationship. And I think what I love as well, it's clear from the get-go that Ellie's in love with Riley. It's maybe not the other way around, and it's going to get there, but I love how they play their relationship on screen. And obviously where it leads to, I think, is done in a great way.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about kind of like the different things that they do there, it's that thing where it would be absolutely fine and fun to see and fun to be part of with your friends and whatnot, but what they're doing can be incredibly romantic, especially when it's just two people together. And, we were saying about the carousel, riding the carousel with kind of like someone that you're interested in, and you're with them and you're just kind of like enjoying that time, can really kind of build up that relationship. And it's the same with the Mortal Kombat as well, and just kind of like, just not doing anything that's super serious, and it's kind of like utilizing the things that you're fans of, and what your interests, I mean, and just building on that, so that it's just so sweet. But no, you're right, when because it's like when she's in her bedroom and she's looking over at the empty bed, and it's like you kind of think, oh, has she done that before when Riley was there? Like taking those like glances and not being able to act upon it, and kind of keeping herself kind of a bit withdrawn because of that. So I definitely see that. But Riley is, a bit older. I think she's like 2 years older or something. So she's
A year or two, yeah.
Yeah, so she's got, kind of maybe not more sense about her, but, a bit more mature.
She's a terrorist. I'm joking.
Or a freedom
No,
fighter.
I know what you mean. She's turned 17.
Yeah.
She said, hasn't she, that,
Yeah.
I've turned 17, this is what they did. And obviously Ali's not had that. And I think to say she's 3 months off, he says something, doesn't he, the opposite, that if you don't get this together, this will be you in a few months. So I'd like the approach they had to that with them. But as you said, going back to the glance of the bed, there's someone that's lost at the moment. Even the scene when she's running around the gym and that person's, this person is not here to protect you at the moment. I don't think it's meant to be if you didn't know this wasn't a flashback, they might think it's John. I don't even think it's that at all. It's them building up to a new character, someone in Ellie's life that we've not met. And I think at this point of the series, we haven't met anyone from Ellie's life preceding, Marlene meets her for the first time in episode 1. So it's one of those where it ends up leaving you with a lot of questions. I think it does such a good job at answering those as the episode progresses. And ultimately, I want to talk about one of the biggest things. And I don't think the game didn't do it at all. Obviously, we never see Riley die on screen. And that sounds like a really horrid thing to say. I always wondered that, are they going to show this? Or are they going to not? And I love that they still won't. Mm-hmm. Not only would it be uncomfortable, you'd probably get an amazing scene, a performance out of them. But I love the fact that the story is that two people went there. They both got bit. They waited to turn. One turned, the other had to kill her, and the other just couldn't turn at all. I know it's really dumb to read it out like that, but for me at least, I know where it's going to go. If you played the game, you'll know that Riley's not going to get brought up again. But I think it's quite important as a viewer to not show that, because I don't think it's necessary for the viewing experience. I think you can read so much more into the loss by not showing it, by just knowing that one person survived that day and it was her.
Yeah, I mean, it's another Bill and Frank thing. If you see what they have, then you don't need to see how it ends. And I swear to God, there was some music cues that we used in episode 3, like it, or at least it was very similar, because I heard bits and I was like, wait a minute, like, don't do this to me, don't try and play me like this. So I heard that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think we can kind of make assumptions, and there's going to be kind of maybe questions about, well, then how did then Marlene get involved? Did they go to the mall because they knew Riley was there to take her, and they found them both, and they just found Ellie? I don't know. That would kind of be my assumption, but it's not entirely necessary for that to happen. But no, it's awful, because you just kind of, despite knowing what's going to happen, you really kind of want to will this to have a different outcome. And what you were saying before, actually, about kind of like having the one infected, I think it's also incredibly important to show how this world has fallen, and that if it was so easy to get for two younger people, yeah, they got bitten, but for two teenagers to fight off a horde of infected, then it would do something. They are changing the way things happen to make it more realistic. So, like we were saying about Joel's injury last week, that the way that was done in game wouldn't feel as real, and the actual outcome of that would have been very questionable had it happened in the way that it did in the game. So to have just one, and to make it a very difficult thing for them to do, is important. And then just final thing on this, right, is we're saying about how Ellie reacts and stuff, and I think we've had glimpses of what she's capable of in this series, but in this whole episode, you just see her, not too many times, but her aggression, and she, she sent that girl to the infirmary because she punched her so many times, and then the way she smashes up the
whole room,
the whole room when she finds out she's been bitten, and even then when she's attacking that infected, she really can go ape shit essentially, and so I think this will definitely help with things to come, especially things that are kind of like around the corner. I'm sure we'll see that again. I'm pretty sure we'll see that again. But also down the line, this really sets up how she's going to be as a character moving forwards, especially when she's faced with kind of insurmountable loss, especially of those that that she loves. So it's a tricky one, but it's fantastic to kind of see that happen, and it just shows that Ellie as a character has so many different layers. She's so jokey, she's so funny, she's so kind of carefree. Yet when she snaps, she'll absolutely snap.
And I think that's what it's built towards. That with Ellie as a character that, oh, give me the gun. She wants the gun. We've seen that in other episodes, and they stay true. She hasn't just 180'd as a character in the series. The Ellie we meet, that we've got to learn a bit more. This is still the same Ellie that was there before, and going back to Sam and Henry with Kansas City, when Sam died, she takes responsibility. It's not her fault. I'd imagine she does go back to Riley, that she was in a situation before where she couldn't. She had been with someone similar, that Ellie knew she can sit through it, survive. He can't, and I think it's testament to the character that they haven't reworked it. Oh, she got bitten and she became this devious teenager. She was like this before. That she's been bitten and she's continuing as she did before. And I think it's important that they take that, and the character development moments are her forging these relationships with people like Joel, saying, that I've had no one for me in my life before, and you've come along and now you can't leave me. And I think it works so well. Obviously, I've seen the whole show. There's something I want to draw on today, but I'm going to save it till we do the season finale, because that's going to be a really, really interesting talking point for this. And again, it's something this show is setting up in a really interesting way. There's these little nooks and crannies of references. I'm not saying references to games, not Easter eggs, but there's going to be some moments that come full circle, and then people are going to get that big, they've been doing this all along type thing. And it isn't something I think you're thinking of either.
Right.
So I'm just going to leave it there for the imagination. But yeah, aside from that, I don't have too much more to say on this episode, if I'm being really honest with you. It was almost, for a flashback, it was the most linear episode yet.
It really was, and it was very beautiful. And I think you could say that about a lot of episodes, and I think this does have some kind of reflections of episode 3. The difference being this is all kind of done in one evening, one night. But I do appreciate the representation and the fact that it's carried over from the game. It's very important to do so. Anyone who's calling that out really just needs to kind of go away. But it's done kind of as realistically and as sensitively as possible. It's true to the characters. It's true to kind of what I guess most teenagers would experience in a normal situation, where it's kind of a friends to essentially I want to go out with you, situation, which I know does happen, a lot. And yeah, it just gives us a wider sense of who Ellie is, which I think for anyone who at this stage was still unsure, this was the moment where it was like, right, if you're not on board, this is like your last chance to hop on board now, because this is the focus. And it gives her a chance to shine as well. I mean, there has been a few moments in the show where Joel's not taken center stage, and this is one of them. But here it's just absolutely necessary, and I'm glad that they decided to give Left Behind this kind of pedestal this time, because I mean, it could have been very easy for it to be a very short thing, and I think there's numerous ways they could have done this. They could have implemented this story, but I think it does give us a break from what's going on. We kind of know we're near the end of the season. We know kind of these last 2 episodes are probably going to be really hectic for them in the present. So it's kind of good to get one kind of big flashback, because I'm going to just presume we're not going to get very many flashbacks, if any at all, now in the next 2 episodes. I don't want to know if we do or not, but that's my what I'm thinking.
My nod of the head is I'm not going to tell you, so don't worry. It's like the old Game of Thrones stuff, isn't it? Like when Game of Thrones was on, it was a spoiler to say someone lived, let alone someone died. And and that's been my approach to TV for the last 8 years 10 years since I watched Game of Thrones, plus that. It's like, okay, now I've realized it to say anything is a spoiler. So I won't go into that, but I will say, people, keep your eyes peeled at upcoming episodes. There's 2 of them, I guess, not many. So it's going to be interesting seeing what people think. But kind of my fun thoughts, I really enjoyed the episode. I felt a bit bad. I was sort of slagging it off at the start, but that wasn't my intentions. But it is one of those where I think, the same as you said, if they'd have narratively could have worked better if, as you said, it just began with Ellie's flashback, and then the episode could have just ended with them panning into the room of Joel on the floor and Ellie trying to look out for him, or 3/4 of the way into the episodes have that another bit. And yeah, I just think they maybe could have handled that a little bit better. And you want to keep people on the edge for a few more weeks if Joel's alive or not. I feel like Game of Thrones probably did it once or twice before, where you have this insane moment and then you're going to have an episode in a different location, and then you're going to go back to the episode after then. And I think that can work a lot better. But maybe these guys know that most people will know the outcome. So who knows? I'm not saying they do. We know they don't, but it is interesting. And it will be interesting when we get to episode 8 next week, which is going to be very exciting to talk about, because we've got 2 more episodes of The Last of Us. I almost pressed the wrong banner. I almost put the Mandalorian one up. It is a Pedro Pascal week, as we keep saying. We're going to have this crossover for a couple of weeks. We've got The Last of Us on a Monday, The Mandalorian on a Wednesday. It's going to be a busy, busy time. And as I said, 2 more episodes of The Last of Us. So that's going to do it for there. We want to hear your thoughts if you're watching it, if you've seen our other stuff. A lot of people have been checking out the Jeffrey Pierce interview, so thank you everybody for getting involved in that. That really does mean a lot. It was a lovely interview, someone to speak to for a bit. And we're trying to get some more fun stuff like that. So if we ever did get over the names, don't think we will for The Last of Us, if I'm being honest, but if we did, we'll put them on our social medias. Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy, with a link to Redbubble in the description below where you can pick up some of our channel merch. But aside from that, I don't know what else to plug. It's been a very busy few days. There's been a lot of videos. There's Rocky 4K videos. There's a Cocaine Bear review. There's a Rocky 4K. I just said that. We had our monthly live stream video last night. We've got The Mandalorian on Wednesday. I'm going to London to watch Creed 3 tomorrow night. So that review is going to drop on Wednesday morning or Tuesday night, who knows these days. But it's a very busy time. And I'm going to always thank Sam. Sorry, the camera's the other way around. There we go. For jumping on. I hope you have a lovely night after this and get some strength. And you just think 2 more weeks, The Last of Us. And then this insane 9-week journey comes to an end, which is absolutely flown by.
Oh, it's been fun. It's been good. I can't complain at all.
It has been. So once more, thank you everyone for watching at home, for people getting involved, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.